Breaking the gray.
Sarah, we're back again. We're back yet again to talk through something really interesting today, and I think we're going to go all over. I'm so excited. So why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest, and let's get started.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Catharine from Energy Bit. So I'm super thrilled to have you on, Catharine. I mean, we met recently in Miami, and I had the pleasure of having that dinner with you in that fabulous restaurant that looked a bit like a bird's nest.
Yes.
And obviously, I was totally enthralled by everything you had to say then. So I thought, let's have you on the podcast and kind of get that information out. So thank you so much for agreeing to be on today. It's great to see you again.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, and since I've met you in October and we're going to be talking about algae, I've got even more exciting research to share. So your timing is perfect because it's pretty fresh.
That's brilliant. Another Rebel Scientist exclusive. Yeah.
The science isn't fresh. It's like 60, 75 years old, but I'm the only one that's talking about it. So it's fresh to me and will certainly be fresh to your listeners.
That's super cool. Yeah, that's exactly what I want. Cutting edge.
Exactly. And so, Catharine, let's get started. What is your superpower? I'm super curious.
Well, my superpower is that I have stumbled across algae, which is a superfood, and you're going to find out that it will change your life in every possible way to the better, and your children, your pets, and the environment. And the irony is, which is why it's probably good I'm on this podcast, is that I'm going to explain the science of algae, why it does what it does in your body. But I'm not a scientist, and I can tell you how I stumbled into this. But my super strength when it comes to algae is I love the science. I've become a PubMed expert, but my greatest joy is taking these complex scientific concepts and interpreting them so it's easy for consumers to understand what they mean and how they work in your body. So my super find is this that I'm going to share with you. My super hack is algae, and my superpower is helping you understand why at this moment in time you must have this every day to survive.
That's great. And you know what? I think you are a scientist because our whole thing is rebel science. You know, it's not about the training you have. It's about how much work you put in. Are you doing the research for yourself and using yourself as a self-experiment? I mean, that's all science.
Exactly.
So you're totally a rebel scientist. We totally embrace your scientific knowledge on this topic.
Thank you. In fact, I'll just say that a couple of years ago, when I was first getting into this, I go to a lot of science conferences, and I befriended this one particular doctor, and I said, I feel like a scientist. I don't have any science training, but I feel like a scientist because while everybody else is on the beach, I'm digging through my 2000th scientific paper and enjoying it. And he said, you are a scientist because scientists take concepts and test them. And if they try and see if they stand up to reality, and if they don't, then you modify your assumption and you and hopefully share it. So that's what a scientist does. You test things. So I thought, okay, well, thank you. I guess I am a scientist, and so is everybody listening.
Yeah, and that's true. And I think that's what I represent here is that I am not a scientist. I am just a novice person who's getting older, who's like, what do I need to do to resolve this stuff that's going on in my body and trying to figure it out? And I'd love to learn more. You mentioned algae, so I know algae. I live by the ocean, but what does that mean? What do we have to know about algae?
Okay, well, I've got 12 years of knowledge. I'm going to try to cram it into a short period of time. So first of all, you need to know that algae is not a supplement. It is a food crop. Well, let me go back even further. Algae was the first life on Earth almost 4 billion years ago. And that's going to be a very important thing to remember when I circle back about why algae is so critical for you at this juncture. So first of all, it's first life on Earth. Number two, it's everywhere. And there's two main types of algae. One is called macroalgae and the other one is microalgae. Now, macroalgae, we're not going to talk too much about it, but it's that big stringy stuff, Russ, that you probably see washing up on shore on California. And it's called seaweed for a reason. It's because it's only in the sea. And it's valuable for you from a nutritional perspective because it has a lot of fiber and it has iodine because it comes from the ocean, but it virtually has no nutrition. You can eat a whole bag of kelp noodles, which would be good for you, but there's virtually no nutrition, but great fiber. Anyways, the other algae is called microalgae, and it's called microalgae because it's microscopic in size. Something like 1 million of these microscopic algae could fit on the head of a pin. That's how tiny it is. And as we go through this, you're going to find out we have a quote from NASA that says 1 gram of algae has the same nutrition as 1,000 grams of vegetables, 1 to 1,000. And so when you start visualizing how that happens, when you get 1 million of these cells on the head of a pin, and then you start consolidating all of that nutrition, you start to understand why it has so much nutrition. Now, microalgae, unlike macroalgae, is everywhere. Macroalgae is only in the sea. Microalgae is in the sea. It's also in the lakes, the rivers, the streams, the soil, your swimming pool, your aquarium. It's everywhere, and it feeds everything. And there's 2 main type strains that we're going to talk about, although there's tens of thousands of strains. But the 2 main ones are blue-green and green. Now, one strain of blue-green algae is called spirulina, and one strain of green algae is called chlorella. And those are the 2 we're going to talk about today, because those are the 2 that we sell, and those are the 2 that are available for sale virtually anywhere. If you go to Walmart or Whole Foods, it's going to be spirulina and chlorella. But I want to be sure you understand they are only one strain of each of the either a blue, green, or green algae, because maybe your listeners will go online and they'll Google blue, green algae, and they'll be horrified to find out about a blue, green algae bloom that's toxic,
poisoning the lakes,
poisoning their favorite beach. That's not what we're talking about today. That is an ocean-derived algae. Like I said, there's lots of blue-green algae, and we're not talking about spirulina. Spirulina and chlorella are the 2 that are harvested in fresh water. They're farmed hydroponically, like lettuce and kale. So that's not what we're talking about. By the way, I just want to defend algae a little bit, even the ones that are in that bloom in the ocean, because algae only shows up when there are toxins. So algae kills bacteria. It's used in every water treatment plant in North America, probably in Europe too, for that reason. So when you see a blue-green algae bloom showing up, it's only because somebody was peeing in the water or had agricultural runoff or some kind of contamination, and algae is the cleanup crew, except that's what you notice. That's what you see, because you can't see the toxins. They are swirling around underneath. So actually be grateful to algae that it's showing up, because it's protecting you. And as you're going to find out, it protects your body when you consume it too, at least when you get it from a safe source, and we pride ourselves on that.
Is that kind of a historical thing? I mean, have people known this for a long time about algae? What? That you can eat eat algae, because like you say, people associate it really with slime on tops of lakes.
Pond scum. Yeah. I know. It was discovered in the late 1800s by a Danish scientist to have the highest protein in the world, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then the German scientists spent another 20, 30 years researching it and found out it was not only the highest protein, but the highest edible protein. And in fact, Otto Warburg is a German scientist, he's passed since then, but who won a Nobel Prize for discovering that cancer can't exist in an alkaline environment. And algae not only has the highest protein, is the most alkaline food in the world. And that's how I got started on this. My younger sister in Canada had breast cancer. She's fine now, but her oncologist told her to change her diet to an alkaline diet. Didn't tell her what it was or why it was good for her. So I'm her big sister who loves her, and I knew nothing about science, but I'm a good researcher. Hey, I'm a rebel scientist, right?
You are.
So I found out, she had changed her diet to a plant-based diet, which led me to algae. And anyways, that's how I discovered algae, was by helping my sister recover from cancer.
And did she recover? I mean, did you put her on a program? I mean, what was your?
Well, I don't want to dig into too much of that. She hates it when I talk about her situation, but she did go through chemo, and she did change her diet. She's still on a plant-based diet, because plants are full of phytonutrients and chlorophyll, which builds your immune system. And we'll talk a little bit about that.
I am interested, to talk about, because there's a lot of stuff in the biohacking world right now about how some of the phytonutrients in plants are actually their defense mechanism and shouldn't be eaten. I don't know if you've seen a lot of the carnivore types are sort of, saying, don't eat kale, don't eat broccoli, don't eat anything, really don't eat any plant-based.
Well, it's specific to okay, we're getting off on a tangent, and I'll indulge you and go down that tangent with you, but I do want to get back to defining the different algae. So the reason why the carnivores are determined not to eat plants is because a lot of plants, particularly spinach and kale, as you mentioned, and almonds, by the way, have lectins and oxalates. They're called anti-nutrients. Now, these lectins and oxalates are types of proteins, and they're very, very sharp and pointed. And they, if you have a sensitivity to it, they can puncture your stomach lining. And there's only one layer of cells in your stomach lining that get between your stomach lining and your bloodstream. So when lectins and oxalates, they can puncture your stomach lining, and then food can ease through that cell wall and get into your bloodstream and cause autoimmune disease and all sorts of sensitivities, allergies. So it's a very big issue. So I'm very glad that you mentioned it.
But algae doesn't have that.
But let me just tell you. So why do plants have lectins and oxalates? Because this is their defense mechanism that they developed over centuries, because they are poisonous and taste terrible, and they developed them to protect themselves from predators, bugs and animals. And so when they would bite the plant, it would taste terrible, and then they would leave them. Well, algae doesn't grow on land. It's a sea-based origin was the sea. So it's never developed or had to develop lectins and oxalates to defend itself. So algae is perfect for anybody who's a carnivore or a keto or a vegan. That's why Dr. Stephen Gundry is so bullish on algae. In fact, I've been on his podcast twice, most recently just aired this week, because he points out for the same thing. He has a book called The Plant Paradox. He points out that you've got to be very conscious of these lectins and oxalates. And things like almonds are just crazy in a high concentration, and they can cause huge amounts of stomach damage. And I'm just so proud. I feel like my algae are like my children. I'm so proud of them because they don't have any.
I'm really feeling an almond and algae war going on right now. But
they're much better off with macadamia nuts or pistachios.
Okay.
They are very satisfying and have virtually the lowest level of lectins and oxalates of the nut community.
Yeah, Sarah, what were you saying there? But before that, I lost you on that one part.
No, I mean, well, this is something that I think is very topical, and it's good to talk about this because there's a lot of kale is bullshit, all of this kind of stuff. The messaging is very difficult to decipher, and obviously with anything to do with food, there are so many conflicting messages about what you should and shouldn't do. So that's why it's very interesting to know about the different things, but also, how is algae, and specifically the ones you talked about? Maybe we can talk a little bit about the specific ones, because
and as we move away from the conversation on lectins and oxalates, my recommendation would be do what makes you feel the best. If eating just meat makes you feel the best, then that is the solution for you. If just eating vegetables is what makes you feel better. People have taken nutrition and turned it into a political war, and it's so unnecessary. The best self-care that you can give yourself is to pay attention to how you feel after you eat something, and just be cognizant and pay attention to that, because that's your body trying to tell you something.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something we totally advocate. It's, first of all, it's self-responsibility, and also it's measurement. There are things you can do. Russ and I now got our Oura rings, but there's so many different things you can do. Okay, let's try and do something and see the effect it has. So I think that's, it's not a one size fits all. So thanks for that's a good point.
Never is, never will be.
Good point.
I want to go back to something just that you mentioned in the beginning, that it's microscopic, and it's if it's microscopic, how do we collect enough of it to make it healthy for us to eat and find enough of it? I'm going back to the basics here. Like you mentioned that the good stuff is microscopic, but are there areas where we can consume enough where we aren't having to gather up massive amounts of it somewhere?
Well, that's why I'm telling you, it's harvested as a food crop. And so I'm going to show you, I don't know, if your community
okay
visual.
Yeah, we can describe
These
it too.
These are algae farms. So this one's spirulina, They're long and narrow, and they're short. Ours are triple filtered spring mountain water. It takes about a month to 6 weeks to grow. They plant it at one end, and it grows in a spiral to the other end of the.
How long is that?
Pardon me?
How long is that? What's the scale?
Oh no, I don't
Acres?
know. Yeah. I mean, what you're looking at
Yeah.
is the equivalent of probably 10 football fields.
Oh, right.
Wow.
Okay, that's large
These
scale.
are huge. These companies that grow them, they're $50 and $100 million companies.
Wow.
What I try to tell people is that algae isn't new. It's just new to you. And it's as big as the beef industry is here in America.
Wow.
This is what's so, it's
Yeah.
both an opportunity, but also frustrating for me because people look at me like I got two heads when I talk about algae. It's like, it's been around for 75 years. It's been growing just like we grow corn and wheat. It's just that you didn't drive by it on your way to work today like they do in Japan or Korea. And so the other algae I'm going to talk about is chlorella, and it grows in round water farms because it's a different type of algae, has different attributes. But it is a food crop. And so when you grow it like this, as you harvest it, it kind of looks like the seaweed that you might see on shore, except it's not. And then we air dry it into a powder, and then we press it into little tablets that are about the size of a baby aspirin.
Oh, there you go, Russ.
So
That's
that-
how you do
yeah,
it. That's how you get enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is spirulina, and this one's
Okay.
chlorella. Spirulina, we're going to talk about in that minute, has a blue-green algae, has two pigments in it, and chlorella has just chlorophyll. It's a green algae. But what I want you to know is that every single one of these tablets, and this is why I love it so much. Look how tiny they are. They're about the size of a baby aspirin. Every single tablet has the same nutrition as a heaping plate of vegetables. And the reason I was able to come up with that calculation is using that quote from NASA that we went through all the weight and the nutrients and stuff. So here's the issue. People know they should be eating more. Well, they know the benefits. There are some downsides, like we talked about, the lectins and oxalates. But it's to cook, clean, and eat vegetables is a huge time sink. It's a lot, and they weigh a lot to carry home from the grocery store. Men traditionally hate vegetables, so do kids, and they spoil. You buy, my arugula goes yellow after 3 days, but algae. First of all, if you can swallow water, you can get the equivalent of a plate of vegetables into your body in a nanosecond. We recommend 5 or 10 a day, but even if you just took 2 or 3, the problem of not getting the nutrients that you need from the vegetables just disappears, because if you can swallow water, you can get the nutrients you need. And we're going to talk about spirulina and chlorella. Spirulina is so nourishing that it can replace your multivitamin, your fish oil, your CoQ10, magnesium, potassium. It will save you not only time and all that cooking, but all the you can save a lot of money by getting rid of all those other nutrients that you don't need.
Well, or just do it on top. I mean, I love the cooking part, but I do use spirulina, and I think it's probably one of the things that I do and I take where I really notice if I don't do it. I usually have a smoothie and I will put in a spoon of spirulina, and you really can feel more energy afterwards.
Yeah.
And I notice if I don't.
Most people, the only downside with spirulina is that it doesn't taste very good. So that's why we have the tablets. So if I chew them, but if you don't like the flavor, you can swallow them, and there is no repeat, not like fish oil. Fish oil repeats. I can't do fish oil. And I tell people, well, where do you think? And people take fish oil because of the omega-3, and I say, well, where do you think the fish get the omega-3 from? They get it from algae. They just consolidate it in their body. So it's cut out the middleman.
You'll cut out the fish.
Save
the fish, save the oceans, and
Leave those fish
algae never goes
alone.
rancid.
Yeah, we just the poor fish.
Yeah.
Poor fish. We like eat them for everything, and they're just like, we're just eating algae. It's good. I think. I'm curious on this though, because dosage. We talked to a mold expert a few weeks ago, and I'm sensing there's going to be a mold and an algae war here. But mold is water-based on land, and algae is in the sea, and you don't really eat mold, I don't think, except if it's cheese. But I'm curious on this, and what someone mentioned this the other day, that like biohackers love to overdose on things. How much of dosage do you need? Like, what do you actually need? Is it one time a day? How does your body process it? I mean, because I know that If I
Yeah.
overdo things, my
Well,
stomach doesn't
before
like
I
me.
go there, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to explain
Sure.
what the two algae are, because if you don't, the dosage means nothing if you don't know what it does. Okay. So as I mentioned, spirulina is a blue-green algae, has this beautiful blue phycocyanin as a blue pigment that has lots of healing properties, including one called anti-angiogenesis, which stops the growth of blood vessels to tumors. Spirulina is known for having the highest concentration of protein in the world. It's all in amino acids, so your body doesn't have to break down anything to get access to it. It's a complete protein. It has all 9 aminos that your body can't make, and so it's got 18 of them. Now, all those, and here's the other amazing thing about spirulina, which you need to remember when we get to the mitochondria conversation. Spirulina is a bacteria. It's called a cyanobacteria. On the top line benefits, that means that it gets into your bloodstream almost instantly. There's nothing for your body to break down to get access to all those aminos. And then spirulina also is loaded with B vitamins, which convert the aminos into energy. So the spirulina has always been known as a energizing algae. It energizes your brain, it energizes your body, and as you're going to find out, it also energizes your mitochondria. Your mitochondria, just to give you a little heads up, they're called little organelles. They're inside every one of your cells, and they generate energy for your body. We use electricity to power our cell phones. We use gasoline to power our cars, and mitochondria are what power your cells. So when I say spirulina energizes your body, it's at the cellular level. And if you don't have cellular energy, you die. It's pretty much that simple. And if you don't have healthy mitochondria, you age and you get disease and you get fatigued. And it's the cause of everything that goes south in your health and your life. So anyway, so spirulina's got not only the highest protein in the world and the highest concentration of iron and 40 other vitamins and minerals, but it has the highest concentration of an enzyme called superoxide dismutase. I know that's a mouthful. It's also known as SOD, and that is one of the few antioxidants that can get into the inner membrane of the mitochondria to protect it from free radical damage, and we'll get into more detail about that. So that's why spirulina is taken in the morning, afternoon, anytime you are fatigued, hungry, want energy, want focus. Before a workout, we generally recommend at least 5 in the morning. If you're going to have it, it can be a meal replacement. There's 0 carbs, so it's ketogenic. I speak at all the keto conferences. So, and we work with Dr. Dominique D'Agostino and keto experts and scientists all over the place, and they've done all measurements. So it does not decrease your ketones or increase your glucose. It's terrific for diabetics. If you have low blood sugar, there is 0 carbs, 0 sugar, 0 animal protein, 0 soy. It's one ingredient, and it's loaded with rich protein. So, but it does not increase your ketone or your glucose. So you could have as few as 2 if you wanted, but you wouldn't really get a great benefit. If you're going to go do a marathon, you'd want 30. We fuel NHL teams, and they put 75 in their smoothie before a hockey game of the
75
spirulina,
each?
and they put 75 in their smoothie of the chlorella, which we'll talk about in a minute, because
Wow.
it pulls out toxins, including lactic acid. So it depends on what you're doing and when you're doing it. So we don't sort of specify a dose, although to get any significant benefits, you're going to need probably 5 or 10 as a minimum dosage amount. It's great for pets. Children, give them half of their age. So if they're 4, give them 2 a day, that sort of thing. So
It sounds like you can't really overdose too much then. If people are taking between 4 and 75, that's a big difference there.
yeah, it's a plant. It's like kale, except it doesn't have lectins and oxalates. It's a food. It's just a very nutrient dense food. And so if you wanted to be conservative and start with 2 or 5, if you're not having your hunger cut, if you're not getting an increase in energy or mental focus, then simply increase it. We're not here to push the product on anybody. We want people to enjoy the benefits of it. And remember, each one of those tablets has the same nutrition as an entire plate of vegetables that you didn't have to clean, cook, or eat. So you can kind of figure it out. So elite athletes clearly would benefit from taking more than if you're a potato couch or couch potato. Sorry. All right.
Yeah.
So that's spirulina, very energizing, very nourishing, great meal replacement, 1 calorie, and used before or during the day when you want that energy and that focus. And again, if you swallow them, there's no flavor and no repeat. Chlorella is a completely different algae. It's a green algae, and it has the highest chlorophyll in the world. Remember, I said spirulina has the highest protein in the world. So chlorophyll is very, very cleansing to your body. That's one of the reasons why my sister, oncologist, wanted her to have a plant-based diet. So you say, well, what's so important about chlorophyll? I'm going to show you a couple things. This is a chart that shows you the chemical composition of chlorophyll and the chemical composition of your blood. They are virtually identical. The only difference is your blood has iron in the middle and chlorophyll has magnesium in the middle. Chlorophyll has been used for centuries for helping people heal from anything because it builds their blood. Even as recently as World War II, they would give the injured liquid chlorophyll if they ran out of blood for transfusions. And this is why, is because chlorophyll builds your blood, and it's also an antibacterial. So if you could use it topically.
I just wanted to ask you, Catherine, because
Yes.
Ari Whitten, who's written a book on red light, because I'm a bit of a red light fanatic, but Ari Whitten has written in one of his books that he thinks that you can actually get chlorophyll can actually go into the cell and
Yes.
absorb light. What do you think? What do you think
I
about
have the
that?
article. I know exactly the reference he's talking about. Well, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But yes, chlorophyll, when you expose your body to red light, whether it's sunlight or red light therapy, basically what it does is it recycles the CoQ10 molecule in the electron transport chain and generates ATP. And I'll get into greater detail about that when we get to the mitochondria piece. So that's one of the benefits of chlorophyll, and it helps explain why we had so many marathon runners and triathletes and actually Olympic athletes who were just raving about the energy they were getting from the algae, because chlorella has the highest amount, but spirulina is almost as much, and they were running outside. So they're not only getting the protein and the B vitamins and the vasodilation from the nitric oxide and the boron, which helps their focus, and 1,000 other things. They were getting the advantage of the ATP from at the cellular level because they were in sunlight. So when I tell you that algae is a game changer, it doesn't matter what you do or what angle you take to look at it. It is crazy that it's been around for 4 billion years, and with people here in North America are just starting to learn about it.
But that is very crazy. That is a very crazy suggestion, because that's actually suggesting that humans photosynthesize in a way.
Yes,
if you're using
wait till I get to the
chlorophyll.
mitochondria. Well, you're gonna when do you get to?
Right.
I haven't even.
Let's do
I'll
the
flip you out
plants?
even more. That's
Are we
no,
plants?
seriously.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, we have, what they're saying is you can absorb the chlorophyll into your cells, and then that acts like the chlorophyll in a plant when you expose it to sunlight.
Wait till we get to the punchline when we get to mitochondria. Yeah, that's So, anyways, so the bottom line is that spirulina has the highest protein in the world, and if you compare it to chicken or eggs, it's off the charts. And also, not only does it have the highest protein, it's the most bioavailable. When you eat animal protein, it's all the aminos are all bound up, and it can take days to get access to them. Collagen are divided into what's called peptides. There's small clusters of aminos. By the way, collagen's not sustainable, and it's not a complete protein either, like algae is. And algae is the only protein that is available in individual aminos. So anyways, that's really what's really cool about it. So back to chlorella, highest chlorophyll in the world, which builds your blood, and as you mentioned, helps stimulate ATP production at the cellular level. But chlorophyll also is a fat-based pigment. And you may say, well, what's so important about that? Well, all of your health issues, and we're going to talk about that in a second, start at the cellular level. And it's primarily the mitochondria in the cell. But equally important is the cell wall. And that cell wall needs to be healthy and permeable to allow nutrients to get in and toxins to get out. Now, we all know that omega-3 and vitamin E and all these fat-based healthy fats help do that. Well, so does chlorophyll. And I'm going to prove it to you. I did this experiment multiple times. I would put, let's start with the spirulina. I would put it in a plate and this beautiful blue color from the phycocyanin would disperse evenly through the water. It would look like an Aegean Sea. But when I did it with the chlorella, which is just chlorophyll, it would just clump. It wouldn't disperse evenly like its brother, spirulina. And after I did it 20 times and I went online and confirmed my discovery, I found out that chlorophyll is a fat-based pigment. Of course, fat and water don't mix. And that's why chlorophyll clumped when I put it in a plate of water, and the blue pigment from the spirulina did disperse because the phycocyanin is a water-based pigment. That's why phycocyanin has healing properties that affect your plasma and your blood, like the stopping of blood vessels to tumors, and why chlorophyll heals your cell walls.
So maybe you should take it with fat then. I mean, if you're drinking, if you're saying it's fat soluble, then perhaps if you drank it with milk instead of water, it would.
No, because what you're doing, what I need people to understand is there's all these, recommendations on how to take supplements, because so that it will have better absorption and better bioavailability. But that's because supplements are made in factories with extracts that do not exist in nature. And so your body has a hard time recognizing them and using them. And so there's different things that you can do, and there's even different foods if you want to absorb certain nutrients. But algae comes from nature, and it has 40 vitamins and minerals already in it. It doesn't need anything more to facilitate absorption because it's already in there. It's a complete package. The analogy I make is,
eat my leaves with fat though. If I'm eating leaves of any kind, I mean, and now we've got the whole discussion about the oxalates and things, but I only will ever eat them with oil or something, so that you dissolving it.
I couldn't make out what you said, what you were eating. It sounded like leaves.
Yeah, sure. Green things.
Leaves?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, of course. A salad, lettuce. But I would only ever eat it with oil, because then you're getting those fat-soluble components of the leaves. I mean, nobody eats you can eat a dry salad, but I think you're not getting the nutrients from it then.
Well, what I'm trying to tell you is there's already all the fats in algae. It's got the omega-3.
Oh, I see. It's got it in there.
It's got GLA. It's got the highest concentration of GLA, which is technically an omega-6, but when it's not heated, it behaves like an omega-3. And if you think that GLA isn't important, the highest concentration of GLA is in mother's breast milk. The only second highest concentration of GLA is in spirulina algae. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Algae is the complete deal. It's the orchestra. All those other supplements are, like soloists. Algae is the complete orchestra, and everything is already, wonderfully blended by Mother Nature to give you. This is why NASA says it's the most nutrient-dense food in the world. This is why the United Nations endorses it as the answer to world hunger. It just has this complex nutrient profile that solves literally every nutrient requirement of our body to give us optimal health, mentally and physically. So you don't have to eat algae with anything. Maybe you do with other things, but you don't have to do it with algae.
Got it. Okay. Cool.
Okay.
All right, let's hit the mitochondrial section.
I haven't finished up on chlorella. So chlorella, highest chlorophyll that builds your cell walls, builds your blood. And chlorella has the hardest cell wall in the plant kingdom. Spirulina has 0. That hard cell wall attaches to toxins: lead, mercury, radiation, aluminum, lactic acid, as I mentioned, alcohol. So it's a chelator. So people take it to remove any kind of toxins, and it's not just the exogenous toxins that we're exposed to. Your body regenerates its cells. 30 trillion cells every day die in your body, and you have to clear those out, or they gather in your lymphatic system and attract bacteria, or change the pH of your cells to acidic, which attracts cancer. So chlorella will pull out all of that garbage. If you don't take your own garbage out from your apartment after a couple of days, it gets pretty stinky. Well, your body does too. Just imagine all that garbage gathering in your body. If you don't get rid of it, you will get sick. It's just a matter of time, not if. You will. So people tend to take chlorella at night because your body goes through a detox repair cycle when you're sleeping. And so the chlorella will facilitate that. Now, if you want just the wellness benefits of the chlorella because of the high chlorophyll and the 40 other vitamins, minerals, and has the highest RNA and DNA in the world and the highest tryptophan in the world, and lots of other highest whatevers. If you just want those wellness benefits and not have to eat any vegetables anymore, again, just like spirulina, 5 or 10 a day would be sufficient. If you want the detox benefits where it will chelate metals or alcohol or lactic acid, you need to take probably closer to 20 or 30. So some people, I personally have about 100 a day. I mean, I eat this stuff like there's no, like candy. I wouldn't go to bed without taking my chlorella because, while you're getting your beauty sleep, it's like having the cleanup crew in there, getting rid of all the garbage, helping restore your RNA and DNA. And it does facilitate a deep sleep anyways. And it also stimulates peristalsis, which is a bowel movement. So, getting rid of the garbage, taking out the garbage, right?
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
So anyway, so they work completely differently. Spirulina is a nourishing, energizing algae taken in the morning, afternoon before a workout. Chlorella is a wellness, cleansing, detox algae, generally taken after a workout or before bed. And again, you can't have too much of either one of them. Chlorella has also been used for centuries for IBS, Crohn's, and gut health. So if there's any lower intestinal issues, because it does have fiber, so it does feed those bacteria in your biome. Spirulina does not have any fiber because it's a bacteria. So anyways, so there you go. There's the two algae.
That's great. So now we know how to take them. Right, we've got a very short amount of time to do the mitochondrial piece, but I wonder if you can fit it into a few minutes because I am interested in what you're saying about how mitochondria are like a bacteria.
Yes. So mitochondria, they've always thought mitochondria was just to generate ATP energy, but they've also realized it controls everything in your body. Now, so what's very interesting is that the mitochondria have their own DNA. We have 25,000 DNA, regular DNA, and the mitochondria only have 37. And you think, how important can 37 of these things be? Well, let me tell you, they're like the air controllers. They control everything. They control your regular DNA. They control your cellular health. And so when your mitochondria DNA get damaged, everything gets damaged. Everything. This is when you get fatigue. This is when you get brain fog. This is when you get Alzheimer's. This is when you get cancer. It's all because of the mitochondria DNA being damaged. And here's the problem. Your mitochondria DNA are located exactly where the ATP is produced. So here's your cell. I'm sorry, I can't, here's your cell. And you have your regular DNA over here. And here's your mitochondria. By the way, there's 2 million mitochondria per cell in your brain. 2 million. So if you didn't think they were important, think again. And there's 5,000 in your muscles and in your heart. So inside the mitochondria, which have two membranes, we'll talk about that in a second, that's where the ATP is produced, and that's where your mitochondria DNA are located. Your regular DNA is way over here in the cheap seats, not anywhere near the mitochondria. So what happens is when you have ATP production, the process throws off free radicals, particularly the most toxic one called superoxide, and it causes the most damage. But the problem, so the two ways to reduce the damage to your mitochondrial DNA is either with a keto diet or fasting, because now keto is fat-based, and so it throws off fewer free radicals. And intermittent fasting or fasting at all reduces free radicals as well. So that's option one, except that's hard for most people to stay on, but even if you cycled in and out, you'll be helping your mitochondria. The other option is to reduce or introduce more antioxidants that will diminish or neutralize the free radicals. But here's the problem. Remember I said there's two membranes in your mitochondria? The mitochondria are so smart. They're like the ICE unit. Nothing gets in there. None of your antioxidants, not vitamin C, vitamin E, nothing gets in there. There are only a handful of antioxidants that can get into that inner membrane to stop free radical damage. One of them is that big mouthful I said at the very beginning called superoxide dismutase. And guess what? Spirulina has the highest concentration of superoxide dismutase in the world. Now, your body does generate superoxide dismutase, but very little and almost none by the time you're 50 or 60. So you're out of luck there. And there's virtually no superoxide dismutase in any other foods. There's a teeny tiny bit in cabbage or broccoli, but it's almost imperceptible. And they found out that it gets damaged in your stomach during digestion. This is where spirulina shines because it's a bacteria. It gets absorbed so quickly, so do all the nutrients, including superoxide dismutase, so it literally bypasses digestion. So it does get to your mitochondria. But here's the problem. Superoxide dismutase is an enzyme. And all enzymes are damaged by heat. So all the other algae companies out there that are low price and high volume, they use high heat to dry their algae because they got to get out to Walmart or wherever. And when I started the company, it was to help my sister and to help other people be healthy. So even though I didn't know about superoxide dismutase at the time, I said, I don't want high heat when we dry our algae. So our algae we don't use high heat. So all of our enzymes, including superoxide dismutase, are alive and well. And virtually everybody else's is dead. So they're shooting blanks.
So there's the difference between like trying to kind of just get some generic powder from somewhere and get it cheap to getting a quality supplement. There's the difference right there. You don't want something that's been heated to a high degree because you're going to lose out on this enzymes, which actually is hugely important because, like you say, having these free radicals in your body, this is something, I mean, let's say even from red light, you know, if you use that too much, anything where you're speeding up the mitochondria, you're potentially producing these free radicals. So even in the biohacking world, when they're trying to speed up their mitochondria, you still have this balance between so this is hugely, this is probably the most important piece, is that you need to have these algae in a state where you still have the ability to
so there's one other way you could get it, which would be, there are not many companies that sell frozen spirulina.
Right.
They have very short shelf life and they're hard to travel with, but those enzymes would also be alive.
Right. Okay.
So it would be either ours or frozen algae.
So energy bits or the frozen algae, that's what we're saying. That's what you need if you want to have good mitochondrial health. I like it.
So I can't heat it up to unfreeze it, though.
I know we're running out of time, but I want to show you this. So this is what the superoxide dismutase does. It takes the free radicals and turns it into water, harmless water. So we're getting in touch, we're being contacted by doctors all over the place because all the science research is going in this direction of mitochondria health. And so anyways, it's very, very important. So I know I have one more big reveal. And the other, so superoxide dismutase, as I said, gets into the inner membrane to protect the mitochondria. Chlorophyll is also one of the few ones that get in there. CoQ10, and of course there's CoQ10 and spirulina or chlorophyll in the algae. And the fourth one that can get in there is melatonin. Now, this is a new discovery. They used to think melatonin was only produced and available through your pineal gland, but they have recently realized it's being created and is important and available at the mitochondria level. I'm just going to start doing some research on that, so I can't give you any more detail about that, but that's fascinating.
Super cool. That is fascinating and super cool, and that's a topic all to itself, I'm sure, because that's kind of really new stuff. But I have to tell you this one last big surprise. That wasn't my big reveal. Oh, okay, go for it.
So the big reveal is this. Remember I said at the very beginning that algae was the first life on Earth, okay? And so that was about 4 billion years ago. And 4 billion years ago, the Earth was gas and water. And then I don't know why, but one little single cell organism called a cyanobacteria started growing. And it was anaerobic because it did its best without oxygen in the environment, because there wasn't any oxygen in the environment at the time. And it generated ATP, but in the process, it released oxygen. So after 1 billion years later, there was enough oxygen on Earth that aerobic cells could start growing, but they didn't generate ATP as well. So, and meanwhile, the little cyanobacteria that did better without oxygen, they were having a hard time surviving. So the big cells absorbed, the language is they engulfed the little cells. And so the little cell would generate the ATP for them, and the big cell would protect them from all that oxygen. So the best way, so they didn't eat them, they just engulfed them, and they created something called the endosymbiotic relationship. And this is all documented in science. It's called the endosymbiotic theory. So the best way I describe it to people is like, hey, if you have a friend who gets kicked out of their apartment, and they say, hey, can I come and stay with you? And you go, oh, okay, fine. But then once the friend gets there, they make your bed, they do your dishes, they do your grocery shopping, they pick up your dry cleaning, and you go, hey, stay forever. That's exactly what happened with the big cells. So after they absorbed the little cell was generating so much ATP for them, that cyanobacteria, also known as spirulina, became your mitochondria. And it's all based in science. So when you take spirulina, you are basically giving yourself. You are giving your mitochondria itself. No surprise that spirulina has everything that your mitochondria need to survive. And this is where the double membrane comes from. Because when cyanobacteria, like spirulina, was out by itself, the first life on Earth, it had a membrane. And then when it got engulfed by the bigger cell created a second, the exterior membrane that is in all of other cells that have these things called porins, Porins, which are little channels that allow molecules and proteins and antioxidants to get in and out. So your mitochondria have that exterior membrane, but the inner membrane, where all the action is, where the DNA is, where the ATP is produced, that's inside the original membrane from when they were the first cell on life on Earth. And that is impenetrable by any other antioxidants except the ones I mentioned that are available in spirulina and chlorella.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's a shame Russ is offline because I'm sure he's got some little sound effect that we can do. Because that is amazing. And like you say, mitochondrial medicine is becoming so important. That we've run out of time, Catherine, but I'm so glad that you came on and shared your passion with us, because it was a full-on download. And you're right, this is something we need to know, the whole thing about the link to mitochondria. It's incredibly topical, incredibly interesting. And
and our food supply is so damaged that you're not going to get, I call algae your nutritional insurance. That way, whatever else you eat is fine. Have it for fun, have it for social, do whatever you want, but give your body what it needs to perform optimally and to protect your mitochondria. So I think
Cover the basis with your algae. That's very
nutrition
important.
Insurance.
Nutrition insurance. Well, thank you so much, and we're definitely going to put all your links up, and we're going to point people in your direction so they know where to get their nutritional insurance.
Yes, that's right. And our website is energybits.com, ENERGYBITS, and we have a 20% discount for your listeners. The discount code is Rebel Scientist, all one word, doesn't matter if it's upper or lowercase, all one word, no space, and you'll always get 20% off everything.
Thank you for doing that, Catherine. We really appreciate that. We're going to put it on our website, and we'll post that out for you. That's super cool. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to say it's goodbye from me and goodbye from Russ, because he's got earphone mouth.
He's been silenced.
I've been silenced, which is not easy to do. You've done it, Catherine. Thank you for silencing me. My wife wants to learn your tricks. Thank you. But I really appreciate it. I'm going to go upstairs now. I've made my orders, and I'm ready to go. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Give us your address and we'll get you some product.
All set. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Breaking the gray.